Hi, and welcome to the Storied Human. I'm here with a friend, Heather McMahon, and she's got so many good things to share with us about how to stay healthy mentally and how to keep your attitude the way you want it to be. I was intrigued and wanted to know more about her background. So welcome, Heather.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So where did this start? I don't really know your background. Like, how did you end up working in the field of mental health and counseling, and what did you major in college, and how did it happen?
It was a very convoluted, long journey, years and years and years. It was not the start at point A and go to point B. I started in the 80s, and I went to school for my associates in human services. And I only chose that program because they did not require an algebra credit from high school.
Totally get it.
And literally, I was like, yeah, I got to get some degree in something. So that was easy to get into. And I did that. And then I went and through that, started working with kiddos in underserved communities and went into early childhood ed, did that degree, associate, worked on that, and thought I wanted to go back to school to be a school teacher. So I started that journey later in the 90s and was in a program. A professor said, you really, I was inspired by their course. It was a psychology course. And I started to look into working with kiddos with eating disorders. And so I started that kind of stuff and nutrition-based kind of work. Then a professor took me under her wing and said, you need to go to graduate school for psychology and counseling. And I said, no, I don't. And she said, yes, you do. And then I went and did a double, a major with a concentration in addiction, because at the time eating disorders was still my interest, and that's a process addiction. And now I do drug and alcohol counseling and mental health counseling in private practice, and that's what I do.
So the professor was right.
The professor is still a very dear and beautiful person in my life, mentoring me still to this day. Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? And I hear this a lot. Like, professors see something in you before you see it, and they encourage you. And thank goodness for them, because it's hard to find our niches. It's hard to find what we're meant to do. That's so good. I didn't know that you concentrated in children. And you still concentrate in children, or?
I was for many years really kind of mainly focused in adolescents. And the past few years, between COVID and not being able to be in the schools and meeting in person as easily, that sort of has gone to the side, because I'm pretty much working remotely now still.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of couples work, a lot of still family work, and I've got a lot of college-age kiddos. So I'm kind of a little bit of everything.
And you so obviously love what you do. Like, I always hear it in your voice when you talk about it. You seem so happy, and like, that's something a lot of us wish we had, because I'm a tech writer and it's really interesting and I really like it. I'm glad I like it, but I don't love it, And I envy people who love what they do. Like, I love this, what we're doing right now, I love. So I love adding that to my life, but it's just so cool that you found the thing that makes your heart sing.
Yes, I've been so fortunate, yeah.
And that you can be of service to the world. Like, you're putting something good out there. You're helping, you're healing. I just love that feeling that you're in that. So what I really want to know, because May is Mental Health Month, what I really want to know is what can you tell us? Like, what are your overriding messages that you wish you could tell everybody? Because I noticed you put a lot of positive things on your social media, and I love them. I read them every day. But what are people's misconceptions about mental health, or especially, I suffer from depression sometimes. What can you tell us about coping? Like, what you wish people knew about how to cope, or when to seek help? Like, any kind of advice that you have, we could really use.
I think what you're doing with your podcast, The Storied Life, letting people tell their story and have their story heard, I think that is the first step in anybody figuring out what they need for coping skills, what they need for management in their life, stress management or whatever else. Because they sometimes we know our story, But when we say it out loud, it changes its power in us. And that's what therapy is all about, is coming in and having a safe space to share the story of now, the story of before. And so I appreciate what you're doing in giving space for people to have their story heard. It matters. Yeah.
It's funny. I just stumbled on that, like the story that you tell yourself, internally. And then I realized there's a whole discipline inside of psychology called narrative psychology. And I was like, maybe I should get a degree, because it's so interesting to me. Yeah. To approach humans that way, because that's sort of my instinct as an English major and a person sort of obsessed with fairy tales and fables and myths and stories. And just, why am I obsessed with it? It's because that's how humans connect. They tell stories, and you can tell a lot about somebody by the stories they tell. And you're so right about, like, I've been in therapy on and off, short term here and there when I need it. And I've raised my children to think of it as a totally normal thing, because my mom was a therapist. So I just think of it as a wonderful, I have this secret helper, like always on call, who I can always do it when I really need it, right? And I noticed that when you say it out loud, it takes the power away. You didn't even know you were thinking it, and then you say it out loud. Like, that to me really hit me when you said that. There's such a power to saying it. And I feel like with certain friends, now that I'm older too, I really share with my friends, and we create a sacred space. And I think that's what therapists do. They create this sacred space where you're safe. And we just don't have that in our regular lives, especially people in conflict or dealing with someone with addiction. Usually it's very difficult to be safe and say what you need to say. So I think what you do is sacred work. I really look at it that way.
Thank you.
And I wish more people went. Like, whenever I go to therapy, I'm always like, I'm going, but the people that are making me go, I wish they would go. Not that they're making me go, but just you wish more people went,
Right. It doesn't have to be intimidating, scary. Like, you can look behind the curtain. It's a safe place.
Yeah, some people really have like a thing, I don't, but I get it. Like, some people, it's a mystery to them. Yes. And I have friends who swear to me they don't need it. And I have to not, do you know how hard it is for me not to laugh hysterically? I mean, I respect them. Maybe they don't. What do I know, right? But to say that, I would never say that in a million years. I had my aunt, God rest her soul, when I told her I was depressed and I was struggling with it, and I didn't go into detail. I just said, I'm a little down, and I had reasons, And she said, I've never been depressed a day in my life. I was like, thank you. That was so helpful. But I said to her, I couldn't resist. I said, no, but you have anxiety. You've been kind of anxious. I've seen you be anxious. Dead silence. And I said, that's kind of like the flip side of depression. But yes.
Yeah.
And also, I read about the Celtic connection. Like, there's a true Celtic connection to depression. And I was like, bingo. My dad was an alcoholic. I smoked cigarettes as a self-medicating thing for a while. And yeah, there's it's a real thing. There's whatever you want to call it. There's a melancholy Irish thing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like genetic. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, so that's why it feels like it's in my bones.
Yeah. Something I found really interesting when I was doing some of my studies in nutrition is that the idea of eating to your ethnicity. So if you're European, eating that way is meant for your mind and body for a reason. So I think about the, stereotypical potatoes, and I love potatoes, and I absolutely have times that I absolutely need a potato. And I really believe that releases dopamine for me in the different foods.
That's so smart. Oh, you should do a book about that, a little ebook.
Oh my, okay.
A little guide. Oh, that's so powerful. It's so funny. I love oatmeal. And I found through Ancestry.com that I'm even more Scottish than I knew. I'm almost half Scottish. Yeah.
Wow.
And oatmeal is my favorite, that's my happy place. And potatoes too. I love potatoes.
Yeah.
Potatoes always make me feel good. Baked potato.
Yep.
One of my favorite things to make is potato leek soup. So I love that connection that you're making. It's crazy, right? And epigenetics, the whole epigenetics thing, I've only scratched the surface of that. I don't really understand it. But the idea that the potato famine could have an effect generations later, that some of us have weight problems because of that.
Yeah.
You know, our bodies are overcompensating. I mean, I would love to blame my weight problem on that, but I mean, it might be part of it. I always say I'm set up to survive in an Arctic tundra, basically.
I love that. Oh my. But you may be healthier than someone that has a different body mass. Like the visual does not match the true health inside.
I say that all the time. You can't tell by looking, because I know skinny people that are like, you know, a minute from a heart attack. And then there's me. For some reason, I have all good blood work. Like my endocrinologist, I do have thyroid, but my endocrinologist loves my blood work. She's just like, yeah, you should probably lose some weight, but you're doing great. Blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides. But I also eat pretty well. You know, I try really hard.
Yeah.
Lowered the carbs and upped the fiber. But I love sugar, though. That sugar thing. Oh, my goodness.
It releases dopamine.
I digress. Yeah. Oh, you're right. It does. Oh, my gosh. Dope. A headache on dope.
Exactly. And that's all connected to those are coping mechanisms. I eat this cake because it makes me feel better. I do this drug because it makes me feel better. It makes things go away. They're all coping mechanisms.
Yes.
It's just picking the ones that serve us more, you know, in a health promoting way than
That's
not.
such a great way to put it. It's like a walk would be better than a piece of cake. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people to establish habits. I'm not a good person with consistency. I have to really work hard. And I also do lose track of time. Like, I definitely am that kind of person. Do you think creative, wacky people just have a harder time in general with consistency and habits?
There's a really neat component in positive psychology that actually challenges you, commands you to find something that makes everything go away. So for an artist, if you're painting on a canvas, you're not thinking about the electric bill you got to pay or the fight you had with someone last night. You are just at the canvas doing the thing. And that creativity, if you have it and you can tap into that and it makes everything go away, it's a coping mechanism, but it's also, we need that absolute disconnect from the stress in our lives and those things that bring that. So whether it's somebody baking or making a piece of furniture or singing, being in nature, all of those things are so necessary. And we really got a lot of time to do that in COVID if we chose to. And coming back out into the world, people are often feeling higher levels of stress because they don't have that time to completely disconnect the same way.
Oh, that's so powerful. And maybe we just don't teach people to do that enough.
We don't give ourselves permission. I have to do this, or for someone else, and when we feel selfish and self-centered, often the messaging in the
especially as women. Yeah, especially as women. Oh my God, I put my kids first, and I look back on those years, and I barely comb my hair, and it's like. But it's hard for me, I think, too, to multitask. I think some people just are not so good at it. So I focus totally on one. That's what I tend to do. But I've always written, and I find that that's my happy place. Like, that's the zone,
Right.
And it feels magical. It feels magical. Like, they talk about the muse and all that. It's definitely that way. Like, a lot of stuff just comes. I don't know how to explain it. I wrote a poem in college that won an award, and the first 2 lines just came to me out of, like, who knows where, right? And it was I'll never forget it. But then the question comes up, why did you wait so long to start writing again? It's like that happened to you, but you still thought, I've got to be, very responsible and get a job and like all that. So yeah, I don't think we teach people to keep that in their lives, whatever that is. And I've thought about that a lot. Like, it could be anything, because I remember spending a lot of time with moms when we had little kids. And I was like, look at this creativity. Like, people think they're not creative. And you look at their homes, they're so beautiful. The quilted coverlet, or the beautiful needlepoint pillow, or even just the colors they chose. Like, you see this creativity and they don't really give themselves credit that that's something they're very good at.
Yep. And being able to just do it for you, no matter what another person's opinion is of it, right? So paint on a canvas. You don't have to be a person that can go put it in a gallery. Just the sensory. I love to paint, and nothing wonderful comes out as far as I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah, the sensory part. It's just, it's very connecting. And the multitasking is a myth. I'm going to just throw that out.
Oh, you're right. It is, isn't it?
It is, because the brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So we even give ourselves a hard time about not being able to do 10 things at once. Like, the animal kingdom does not do 10 things at once. They hunt, they sleep, they eat, they drink, they protect, but they're not, it's just not kind to ourselves.
We're not built that way, right? Well, I always love to say, like, our bodies are the same as 100,000 years ago. They haven't changed much, but society has changed so much, and technology is not built for our human bodies. And so we're in this crisis, this stress crisis of having to deal with this too much information. And unless I think the work you're doing is really important, because you're helping people become conscious of that and take a break and step away. I don't think enough people are getting that message. I just see people, first of all, people have to work so much, some people, just to survive. And so that puts you in this reactive survival mode. And I just feel that's just so hard for people.
And that changes brain chemistry. When we perceive this, or we perceive it as stress, or even just the stress on the organs in our body, it changes brain chemistry. So then we therefore respond to the world in a different manner and perceive it.
And there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And it's justified, some of it. It's like you're afraid you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
And things are tough and everything costs more. I mean, I just often feel incredibly lucky that I don't have those stressors anymore, and that I live in a house with woods behind it. Like, these simple things that just help so much.
Yeah.
Sit with my coffee and look at the woods and listen to the birds, and some people don't have that at all.
No, but they can access it. So
yes,
here's I never want to minimize someone's circumstances, financially, socially, career-wise, any of that. There are creative ways to access. So if I can't go to the woods, I can go to a local public library, hopefully, possibly, and watch on a computer screen nature. Even that, or listen to nature sounds, or very few people are not in a situation where they can't access a cell phone, even if it's not theirs. Taking a walk, even if you live in a busy, loud, smelly city, there's beauty in architecture. There's beauty, there is wildlife in the middle of cities. But it's that you gotta look for it and know that tapping into that in an intentional way can change the stress response, can change the blood pressure, can change the breath rate, all of it. Yeah.
So I feel like you're trying to get that message out, and it's so great. I feel like I see that in your social media and your Instagram messages. I just feel like you put that out in the world. That's so helpful. That's so good. We're all interconnected. It's so amazingly powerful to think that not only does connecting help you right away, but it literally physically changes. Never even thought about that. That's so cool. It changes your brain because, we're part of this whole thing. And I just feel like people have gotten so far away from that.
Yeah. And there's so much science behind the truth that we need a connection outside of ourselves. So whether that's creation or creator or whatever that is, I mean, I will sometimes throw a prayer up to my aunt who's passed away during a Red Sox game, because she can get something done up there. I
love that.
Anything that pulls you outside of yourself, that faith in something is so connected to our mind, body, and spirit that we need. And
we're built that way. Yeah.
Yep, the physical.
And it's way beyond what your religion is. People need something, right? We're all connected. And this is the thing that kills me. I have a blog and it says, we are not separate. That's the subtitle, because we're not. And when we are convinced that we are separate, that's when it's so painful that we act in that fear mode and we don't remember who we really are. We're all part of this big, beautiful humanity. And I think it took me a while to get there, but I now like to talk about that because it's so important. And I feel like we're shifting. I feel like the world is shifting. I really do. I feel like more people are waking up. The response to Ukraine really convinced me, as awful as it is, and it really depressed me when I first heard about it. I didn't know what to do with it. Like a lot of people, right? We don't know what to do with it. We can't really help. Maybe we can send money, but it's so awful. But then I started to say to myself, look at the whole world. The whole world is supporting Ukraine. Like, when have you seen that?
Yeah.
And that to me made me feel better. It's like much more positive. It's like the world has changed, you know? Maybe some people do remember that we're not separate. I've never seen a response like this in my lifetime.
And you tap into the idea of we are connected and we felt isolated and we're coming back out of that isolation. But think about when we first started with COVID, that there was a camaraderie, there was an energy, there was a support worldwide. And people in America seeing what people in Italy were doing, singing to each other across the balconies and, you know, all these things. And then it got too much and we went into that isolated fight or flight or freeze mode.
Yeah.
And to come out the other side, the awakening, I think, is part of that. We need that connection again. And when you talked about the spirituality of something outside of ourselves, that includes the human connection, because it's a spiritual experience. And there's a chemical experience when you sit across the room with another human. Your brains release signaling to each other, and our brains are meant to help us survive, and it helps us connect, and it helps us detect, you know, danger and things like that.
I love that. Yeah. That's so powerful. And it's so important to remember. And somebody said to me, like, if you really want to see who we are, see how we act when there's a crisis. See how we act when there's a disaster. How do we act? We act beautifully. We help each other. And I always say that's who we really are. Hold on to that.
Yeah,
because it's easy to get what?
We forget it though.
We do. There's that fear, you know, that you're going to lose your job or you have to please them. And I just think the more people we can remind, I always call it remind who you really are.
Yeah. Remind
someone of who they really are.
Right.
And that's part of the whole, your work.
Yeah. Well, it's offering a space to find that. If you don't know who you are creating, people always say, well, I've got to go back and do all these things backwards. And it's like, nope, this is so trite and everyone has heard it, I'm sure, but that's why the rearview mirror is so small. Refer, but you can't focus on that when you're driving down to your next destination or something's not going to go well. So coming forward and building forward, building up. Who do I want to be? What kind of job do I want? What's going to bring me joy?
Yeah.
Yes, we have to pay the bills and have food on the table. How can I creatively fill my life with what brings me energy, joy, and peace, and still get those needs met? There are ways.
I love that. Yeah, so you got to like open up your mind. And I do like the idea that, you know, I have a job that I like, right? But that doesn't mean I can't do other things that I love. Just fill my other parts of my life with stuff that bring me joy. So the whole package is good. Because I think a lot of us were like 80s, 90s, we were like, I need to find my passion. I need to have a career that fulfills me in every way. And it's like, well, good luck with that.
And you have to stay there for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. This whole passion thing, like, I mean, I respect people that have a passion. It's great. But it was said too many times, you know, and I was just like, I remember saying to somebody, my passion is I like a paycheck. But I also was raised very risk adverse to having your own business or exploring things. Like a lot of people, I think, especially older people. Like I was raised to be afraid of having your own business. And I witnessed my father have his own business and he lost money. And so the message was, don't do this, you know, be safe. But that's like the worst thing in the world to say to someone like me, because I'm all over the place. I can't like fit in that corporate box and stay there.
Yeah. But this podcast feeds your creative side, right? And you're doing it and you're giving back. And I think that's key. No matter what your circumstances are, there are ways to give back. And that releases stress and anxiety and all kinds of other negative thoughts and feelings and that's the first thing I tell a lot of clients that are really having a really tough time with anxiety and depression. Go spend one day volunteering, clean a trail, work in a soup kitchen, go through your closet and donate something. That thing that pulls us outside of ourselves, and that the fear-based response to our careers, our relationships, are
so good. Yeah. One thing I found so cool when I was when my kids were little was I got super involved with all the volunteer stuff at school, and I felt like that just made me feel so good.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I had been without kids for so long, but I didn't do that. I mean, I did do ESL for a little while. I tutored English, and that made me feel so good. So we have to get this out there more. People don't necessarily think of that when they're sad or in crisis.
Right.
But you're so right. That's what you need to, this will like set your mind right.
It's a paradigm shift. It's a perspective shift. And it can, again, even if you can't go out and do something, there's something in your house you can give away to someone that needs it. We all have something, even if it's a set of crayons to the local school or library. Like there's always something that we can do outside of ourselves.
That's so good. What I like about your advice is a lot of it is very practical, and you find a way to help someone find that wherever they are, whatever their environment is. And I love practical because people can hold on to that,
Yeah, and people find it too easy. Like that, doing that isn't going to make a difference. It's too easy. The brain making it hard because it feels like, well, that coloring a picture is going to make me feel better. I don't think so.
Yeah,
well, try it. Try it.
Yeah,
and I've yet to hear someone try something. If they don't like it, if they don't like coloring, of course, please don't do that. Don't keep trying it. It's going to suddenly magically work. But keep trying a lot of different things. There will be something that will be the thing for you. Like playing with Play-Doh. I don't know, going outside and counting the leaves on a tree. There will be something that will spark a shift in your energy and in your thought process.
I think that's such great advice. I think people need that advice. I love that. Is there anything else you would like to share with us?
I think you are going to change a lot of people's lives by the stories you let them tell. So thank you for doing what you do. Just giving yourself permission. Something small. They don't have to be big things. They don't have to cost money, but something that just says, wait a minute, I matter. And I'm going to find something that helps me remember that, whether it's the extra glass of water in the day or a walk in the woods or whatever the thing is. I'm going to find those things. And I encourage, I challenge, I hope for people to do that because we're stuck with ourselves. We might as well take care of ourselves. I tell my clients that all the time.
I love that though.
Yeah.
Because we forget that.
Yeah.
I forgot to be nice to myself.
Yeah.
And I slowly got back to that. And it's wonderful now. Like I get up every morning, I have this habit of looking in the mirror and smiling at myself. I read it somewhere. It's like the internal smile. It's like a Buddha.
Yes.
It's a Buddhist thing. And I just thought, well, I could do that. That's easy to do. So I started doing it every morning. I still do it. Every time I see myself in the mirror, I smile. Because what do you do when you see someone you love?
Right.
Smile.
Right.
And I'm so loving to everyone else. And I'm just like, duh. And I would say that it's not dramatic, but over time, it really helped. I'm getting chills because it really helped. And I tell people it's such a simple thing you can do to be kind to yourself. Started taking care of my skin. Started putting, lotion on every night, not forgetting.
Wow.
These little things that tell your cells and your body, I love you. I'm taking care of you. You matter.
Yeah.
I
love that.
It took a while, but I got there. So when I did have breast cancer in 2018, and I was ready to have it. I know that sounds crazy, but I had done genetic counseling, and they were definitely, I didn't have any genes that were bad, but they knew that the preponderance of cancer on my dad's side meant that I probably should be on the lookout, especially breast cancer. So they started upping the frequency of my tests. I tell everybody, go get genetic testing if they say you should. There's nothing bad. There's no bad side.
Yeah.
Like the probability that you have something is, very low, that you have a bad gene. And the good part is they'll tell you how often to have your tests. They'll give you a plan so that you can, it's not a plan to prevent cancer. It's a plan to find it. I don't think people understand, like they started putting me on, like instead of a yearly mammogram, I did a mammogram in January and an MRI in June. So every 6 months I had something. And I said to my husband, I was so happy because I said, look, if they find something, it's going to be really little because it's only within 6 months. Well, guess what? They found something and it was really little. I had 20 days of radiation. Done.
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing. But when I was ready for it, I understood they were looking for it. I had a surgeon who was like a nut. Like she would take my biopsy was negative. She put me in surgery and took a bigger sample. It was negative. It was benign. And she said, I don't like the way the cells look around this sample. It's like she sniffed out my tumor. It was a teeny tiny tumor. She felt it.
Yeah.
And I was mad at her at the time. I didn't understand. They're so much more aggressive now earlier, which is great.
Yeah.
So when she finally told me she found something, I wasn't surprised, and she's like, well, we usually have to give our patients like an Ativan. It's like, why are you so calm? And I was like, well, what did I think you were doing? It's like, you were looking for it and you found it. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
I say this because I think so much about where are you when these things happen to you, right? I was in a good place and my husband was super supportive, so I could do it. And I thought so much about, what if this happened another time? And what if you were alone? And all these, it's so different when you go through something like that and you're supported and you're feeling upbeat. I used to talk to my cells. I used to say, all right, we're gonna fight this. This is gonna work. We're gonna be fine. I used to talk to my cells like every day.
I love that.
And it works. It works. But I caution, the cautionary part is I was able to do that. I was at a good place. I was supported. My husband would drive me there. He would brush my hair. He would bring me protein drinks. I mean, so many people are not supported. They don't have the kind of, I live in a place where we have ridiculous health care. Mm-hmm. So I have a surgeon who was looking really hard, and I have mammograms that are easy to get, So it just brought that whole focus of not everybody has that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about is preventative, proactive, rather than reactive. I'm going to have my sense of self, my peace of mind in place before. It's like a fire drill, right? We have those before the fire. If we wait until the fire and go, which door do I go out? Right? That's when we can't handle those situations as well. And again, everything you're saying about you had access to, okay, so if I live somewhere and I don't have family that support me or friends or coworkers, join a book club, join a hiking group, join a group of people, even online, that they then you create your support. You find your tribe, you find your energy, that when those things happen, you've got a buffer. You've got people that are like, I know you and I'm here for you. Even if I can't get to you physically, just that emotional connection can help that sort of event.
So funny, we talked about that yesterday when I talked to Tara. We talked about prevention. And she talked about, why are people waiting till something happens to their health? Why can't they eat better now and be in better shape and be able to handle things better? And she also we talked about tribes. I used the word tribe. It's so important to put those things in place. Yeah. I was so grateful because if you have to have breast cancer, that's the way to do it. I mean, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was not bad at all. Because I didn't have to have chemo.
Right.
And that's their whole thing now. They're trying really hard to aggressively find your tumor when it's tiny, nail it with radiation, you're done. Now, the worst part is they give you this medicine. It's like, oh, God. They give you a medicine if your tumor is estrogen positive, right? They suck the estrogen out of your breast. That's what the medicine does. It's called tamoxifen if you haven't had menopause, or Arimidex if you have. Yeah. So I was like right on the line. I had menopause really late. So they gave me this and they said, well, I said, my symptoms are like killing me. And they're like, well, you're probably perimenopausal. I was like, thanks for sharing. But it was really bad. I went from like nothing, no menopausal symptoms, to the worst. So it was actually worse than the treatment. But it's still worth it. I tell people it's worth it. Find a way, get an ice pack and put it on your neck at night, and put it on your chest and, get outside and walk. You'll feel better. And it's so worth it because it reduces your recurrence rate to 17%, which is less than the average woman's percent. That's like 21% that you'll get cancer in your lifetime. Wow. And mine's 17% that I'll get recurrence. So every time I got miserable with the symptoms, I would go online and I would read that, because I like data. Mm-hmm. I'm a logical person, Mm-hmm. I like data. I like, as creative as I can be, I really cling to data. So I was like, okay, 17%, I can do this. Because you really do. You just want to go off it. I read tales of women who went off it. But I believe in science. I really do.
Yes, absolutely.
I digress, but it's really important to have that tribe. It really is.
Yeah. And there's science behind you having a conversation with people on your podcast. There's science behind writing. There's science behind reading. Most what we do is data driven. So in the world of psychology, if you're concerned about going to therapy because you think it's going to be this hokey pokey weird thing, it's data driven. It's kind of uniform across the board. There's different personalities. If you sit with a therapist and you're not jiving in personality, it's like buying a car. Go try another one. You don't have to buy that therapist, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I've actually been through that, and I kind of regret that when you need one, you have to shop for one.
Yes.
Sometimes that's tough. But I did. I went to one, and I don't know why she was a therapist, actually. She was pretty horrible, but it was okay. I was like, whatever, someone will jive with you. And I found another one who was like, the opposite.
Yes.
She was just so kind and so, I don't know. I think some therapists are like angels. I really do. She was just so soothing, and she was just what I needed. She was so soothing. I think also because I lost my mom when I was 43. So when I get a woman like that, I just, it hits all the places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's just such a loving, she had like a really loving presence. And I have to say that since I've had breast cancer, I've always been pretty compassionate, and I try to be loving towards my friends, but I just don't hold back now.
Yeah.
I say it, and I just feel this love for people, and I let it out. Something happened, like yesterday at the party, my son's graduation party, I saw a couple that I hadn't seen in a while, and the woman is my old friend. And I said something about their son. I said, Rich and I were talking about your son, and he's such a kind person. He's such a good person. And they were like, thank you. And I was like, no, we noticed it, And then we talked about, they said, well, we feel that way about your son. And I said, yeah, my son is very sensitive. I said, but he was lucky enough to be raised by my husband, who is very masculine, but gentle. And I looked at Joe, who I don't talk to that much, my friend's husband. And I said, well, we were talking about you, Joe. You're that kind of dad. And I said, you're very loving and you're very masculine, but you're very feeling. And he was just like, whoa. But I just say it now, Heather.
Why not? I mean,
I just put it out there.
Yep. And I think that's beautiful because no one has regretted they've not regretted doing the thing as much as they've regretted not doing the thing.
Well, there's a mouthful. Yes. Yeah. It's like, I think that's my whole thing now is like, well, like it or not, you've got a limited time. When you hit a certain age, you're like, okay, there's so many years in front, perhaps if we're lucky, right? I'm going for the maximum,
I think you'll get there.
I'm going for 90 or more. But, what are you waiting for? Basically, that's where I got. I also read a study that said people live longer who have stuff to look forward to.
Yes.
They literally do. And have a happier older age. I've seen happiness studies that say people that are older are happier.
Mm-hmm. Because they're not worried about all the other thoughts and opinions and feelings of others in a way that it dictates who they are.
It's so true.
Yeah, right? And they've maybe hopefully created a space for themselves to say, this fits, this belongs. That doesn't fit, it doesn't belong, whether it's people, places, or things.
And there's a peacefulness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we're trying to imagine retirement, and I said to my husband, we won't have this stress of trying to squeeze in this, getting the garden in and fixing up the patio and, all this. I said, it will just be, we'll just do it.
Yes.
And we'll do it with a lot of pleasure because we'll have time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a lovely thing to look forward to. And I just love the reminders that you have. I think people are going to be really helped by this conversation and your social media messages and just your work. I love the volunteer reminder. I just love that creativity reminder, find your thing. So good for people, so healing. So I thank you for this time.
I thank you. I thank you for all you're putting out into the world as well. Thank you.
I think it's a mutual admiration society.
I think we're pretty stuck with each other.
All right. You have a great day.
Thank you, Lynn. You too.
Bye-bye.